You've probably seen the last BBC episode of the Newsnight. That was, mainly about Poland, about the Putinizing of our life. That the term was used there. And as you probably well aware of, this material, this Newsnight in BBC was created by Maja Rostowska, the daughter of Jacek Rostowski, and Kate Russell, which is the daughter of one of the main politicians in the Democratic Liberal Party in European Parliament. And we could ask proper questions that if these things are very common, that we have the impression that these materials are, views about Poland, which is made abroad, but still someone from the inside has its own, political agenda. Is it very common, or it is only, something like accidentally?
Well, first off, dobry wieczór. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate being among so many friendly faces. This past weekend, I was in a place where there were less friendly faces at Bal Socialista. This Maja Rostowska video, it's like Pomaska today voting in the European Union to censure Poland. I mean, Jarosław Kaczynski is very, very correct when he says Poland's worst sort. And I find that in Poland, frequently the apple does not fall far from the tree. I know this is a cliche, but if you look at a lot of these patrilineal lines, the Gertiks, the Geriks, the Rostovskis, the Żuławskis, there's a lot of passed-on philosophical viewpoints, for better or worse, because alternatively you have the Romaszewska, I'd like to say the Tyrmands. So it's not that surprising when you see a piece of agitprop like this BBC piece, and this is something that I've been certainly in the West fighting vociferously against. I've been trying to refute and break down, deconstruct some of these very false narratives. The Putinization of Poland, I mean, it's the healthiest democracy in Europe by far. We can see that, given the last couple of months, the people have risen up and extended a democratic mandate to a party that represents now reform. Whatever they represented in the past, the opposition was holistically working with all its fragmented pieces, whether it was SLD, PO, PSL, all of these post-communist vestigial traits, these entities that just would not die. The people have said enough's enough. The last 8 years of institutional corruption have driven this really over-the-top emphatic mandate. This mandate, it cannot be denied. For a change in Poland, there was no election irregularities, no allegations of vote stealing. Of course, PSL just gets the 5% it needs to continue looting the treasury, but that's to be expected given their rural footprint. So when we talk about Maja Rostowska's Putinization agitprop, which is what I always call it, it's not that surprising. It's not the first. There have been many other examples that I will go through in the last 3 months in the Western press that have been even worse. I mean, I don't know if you guys were aware, but Poland attacked NATO. That's what you read in the New York Times, we attacked NATO because apparently NATO is freedom and EU values and higher values, and we're just a bunch of Neanderthals who are fighting democracy. I'm not sure I just did exactly the right thing. I would have arrested every single person who was derelict in their duty and not accepting their termination orders. One of the things I've been writing about a lot in the last couple months is the circular logic, what you call in philosophy a tautology. So you follow a circle and it keeps proving itself. So when the media, who is, especially in the West, very strong connections with the vanquished looters of the last government. These were people who had Western access, who had Western media friends and connections. Anne Applebaum, who I frequently call in social media Anne Apple Fraud, or Anne Apple Fraulein, for her her real allegiances, which is Europe and Berlin, and not, backwards Poland. She has a lot of connections in Washington, D.C., in London, in Paris, in Berlin, in Brussels. And she has exploited that because she is not an impartial observer of the narrative. She is not a journalist anymore. Apparently, she's somewhat of a historian who was very analytical about Russia, and she was somewhat hawkish on Russia, except from April 2010 till June 2010. Then everything she wrote in the Telegraph was very pro-Russian for the first time, which is not coincidental. But she has very much informed the Western narrative. It's not a coincidence that the first major mainstream Western piece, in America at least, was in the Washington Post, where she is a contributor. And the opinion page editorial chief, a guy named Jackson Deal, good friend, they've known each other a long time, and he took as a fait accompli every bit of pejorative and pernicious conjecture, every bit of rumor mongering or just utter manufacture that she could distribute in the West. He took that as fact. And then the media reinforcing tautology took over, because then the New York Times quoted him. Then the Associated Press quoted him. So these journalists who make things up quote each other, and all of a sudden, after 2 or 3 times quoting each other, it becomes a fact. And so this is the kind of battle we're up against, because they are a very insular crew. They are academic elites, educated in the same blowhard schools like
Matthew,
Harvard and Oxford.
Let me stop you here for a bit, because my next question will be about this particular mechanism that you are describing as a circular logic.
I'll come up with more material.
And I think we need to just focus on that a little bit, because it is very, very important, and still it repeats itself one after another times, and we still see the same bluff.
It's definitely methodological.
Yes. I'm speaking about this, the same mechanism, but made by Polish journalists abroad. Is it work the same, or do you think it is similar, that like an Applebaum and Jackson Deal is made in your opinion about these voices, echoes from abroad, but made by Polish journalists in foreign press, and then quoted by our media?
Yeah, no, I love when they quote each other this way. So Gazeta Wyborcza writes some utter nonsense, and then the Western press says, well, Polish journalists are saying this, as if this is a representative sample. The best was who was utilized in Rostovska's BBC piece as the independent media. And I mean, it doesn't get farther left. What was it? Krytyka Liberalna?
Kultura
Liberalna. So this was the independent media. I mean, the people they were interviewing looked like they just came from an Occupy Wall Street event. It was really as far left as it gets. And the quote-unquote media censorship that the Gazeta Wyborcza crowd is pushing in the West, as we know here, is utter nonsense. The media censorship was happening the last 8 years, and it's the same people who are crying foul now, who are crying democracy's under attack, who saw nothing, who never saw journalists getting arrested, never saw elections getting stolen, never asked anything about the way public contracts were doled out and procurement, never complained about a full-scale attack on the offices of Prost after they printed the transcripts of the tapes of Afera Taśmowa. So the double standard is really, really incredible. But again, what's key is that these people are not only do they know each other, but they're from the same philosophical zeitgeist. They believe Europe first and Poland second. They believe in the United Nations first, America second. They believe that global national sovereign borders need to be erased so that we can prevent war. This is obviously utopian fantasy, and it fits into their logic that not only can they prevent war by erasing sovereign borders, but there needs to be an elect, a leadership, and of course the academic elite, the media elite, they will be it. So they have a very vested interest in accumulating political power, financial wealth. You look at the Davos crowd. They all say the same thing, and they're getting rich pushing this agenda, even as empirically it's failing the world. I mean, you don't have to look very far from here to see their projects are going very, very badly, and Poland is going relatively well.
Matthew, have you seen a similar mechanism of control of public opinion in the United States, in U.S. media? And I mean, have you seen the mechanism of quoting your own journalists from foreign press as a voice of France, Britain, China? Is it also a problem across the ocean, or only do you have the same problem only in Poland? And is it something that it's unique in our country?
No. This is a problem. The way I look at this is that the media over the last 50 years, and starting in the West, starting in America and the UK, I mean, BBC being a great example, they've become experts, self-appointed experts. They don't report the news anymore. They believe, and it goes back to the 1940s and rooting out communism in America, that the media became a cheerleader for leftist ideas. The media's always slanted left. The media's always wanted to be engaged. Newspaper men in old school New York endorsed candidates and looked to shape public opinion. But by the 1940s, Edward R. Murrow being a great example, they started injecting themselves into the debate as self-appointed experts, and that has only accelerated. So now they go on, not to report the news, but to interpret it. And they have a goal. They believe that the media has a holy role to play, which is to help people understand. And that's not by disclosing things openly and honestly and transparently. It's by selling a narrative. I mean, in the U.S., we have about 20 Gazeta Wyborczas. So as bad as it is here, we have it where our entire media complex, only recently seeing a little bit of an inflection with Fox News and the internet, but for 50 years, our entire media complex has existed to push big government philosophy, to push leftist and socialist philosophy from the New Deal to the Great Society. And we have it to the point where come elections, they don't even pretend. They're endorsing candidates. When the election returns are coming, they're calling electoral races early to try and impact the voting in the last hours. So it's not something that I think is unique to Poland or to the UK or continental Europe. This is a phenomenon that's evolved with the advent of television news and really pushing subtly what's going on in the world beyond helping people understand, but forcing them into a narrative box. And it's only gotten worse in the last 10 years because the centralizing powers, predominantly Washington, D.C. and Brussels, have a lot at stake. So they're funding all sorts of mechanisms to push their narrative. My favorite is NGOs, think tanks. They're supposed to be as unbiased and analytical as can be, but in Europe, they're funded out of European taxpayer funds. So there's always going to be an agenda there. And so in the West, when they're quoting on Poland, a lot of NGO analysts, thinkers, these people are being paid by Brussels to push more Brussels. So they have no credibility whatsoever, but they are given a veneer of independence that undermines truth.
Matthew, let's speak about names because I think that
you want me to name names?
Yeah, I mean names. Let's see. Can you tell me, in your opinion, which person or titles or journalists or politicians excel in that?
In agitprop and spreading lies?
Creation of the unilateral relations about the Poland, because I think you can name a couple of people, and you can't wait to do that. So
yes, I cannot wait.
Just translate it into Polish and give you the voice.
So the worst, I mean, there's many worst. Henry Foy, London Financial Times, Annabelle Chapman, Politico, Jan Chensky, Politico, Edward Lucas, The Economist, Rick Lyman, The New York Times, Ivan Krastev, works for a think tank, writes for The New York Times and others. Maciej Bartkowski has contributed to The Hill. These are some of the worst. But for me, the really worst are the guys who work for the FT, the Financial Times, and The Economist. Because these are journalistic platforms that are supposed to be focused on numbers. And numbers don't lie, people do. And these guys lie. They have totally went against the mandate of the platforms that have very high credibility globally. And to me, that's the most offensive. With Politico, you know what you're getting. You're getting a leftist globalist rag. It's like, an international Gazeta Wyborcza. But when the FT and The Economist, who have had great reputations for the last 40 years for being unbiased and focused on the math, the economic realities of the world, where they have their Polish correspondents so engaged in an agitprop narrative, and a lot of it based on personal relationships, and a lot of it based on ideological simpatico. Edward Lucas is a very good friend of Radosław Sikorski and Anne Applebaum. The irony is that when Radosław Sikorski was in peace, he didn't cover peace very accurately either. So his relationship drives his coverage. I've reached out to him in my very peaceful way on social media and suggested that he should recuse himself from all coverage. It's like Anne Applebaum covering the actions of the Polish government in international press. Given her husband's position in government, there is an incredible conflict of interests. And then you can layer in the financial incentive. His paycheck was paid by the taxpayer. So she had an incentive to make sure that he stayed in that role. Hobierin Dvor is in very good shape these days, and indirectly it is due to the taxpayer. So she should be recusing herself from writing in the Telegraph. And she said she doesn't talk about Polish partisan politics, but she was the first one linking to some of these ridiculous narrative pieces like Antoni Macierewicz is an anti-Semite, Poland attacks NATO. So even if she's not writing the pieces, she is disseminating them, and she's certainly inspiring them. I know. I'm up against it in the West. You guys are used to it here with these Poland's. I know. We work together. It's good. It's like Reagan said, there's a silent majority, and in Poland right now, the silent majority finally went to the ballot box and kicked out the post-commie bastards.
But Matthew, the next question. When we were speaking for the Do Rzeczy interview, you said something very interesting, and that is that if you want to speak the truth in Polish media, you have to do it in the tabloid. And we do not have, good esteem about the tabloids. We think sometimes they're lying or they're too, manipulative, things like that.
As opposed to the mainstream press.
Yes. Can you explain us your logic behind this reasoning?
It's really pretty simple. The tabloids have a very obvious business model. They sell papers to make money. If they write things that aren't interesting, if they write things that don't appeal, they don't make money, they go out of business. Certainly a lot of what's in the tabloids is very, very lowbrow, very bottom of the barrel. But the editorial pages in the tabloids have a more plural basis than the mainstream press. In Gazeta Wyborcza, you read the same thing by the same people over and over again, trying to phrase it in different ways because they are concertedly trying to manipulate opinion. And the tabloids, and I've written for Super Express a lot, you'll have Korwin Mikke, you'll have Leszek Miller, you'll have Matthew Tyrmand, you'll have Sławomir Jastrzębowski, and there really is a pluralism. And they recognize that in, especially this editorial page, people who read the tabloids are more interested in the pluralism. They are not looking to be spoon-fed just utter nonsense. So for especially the things that I write, and some would argue I'm somewhat aggressive in my rhetoric, the tabloid is a very, very, it feels like home. It feels like the right place because in the mainstream press, you cross a line when you do not say what they are pushing. If you give an alternative viewpoint to the agenda, the narrative they're spinning, you're persona non grata. I found that out for about 2-3 years with Gazeta Wyborcza. Gazeta Wyborcza, they understand communism and the powerful mechanisms behind communism, and they knew that if they want to silence opposition, they don't attack, they just ignore. This was the same thing my father experienced in the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s when he was blacklisted in different ways. So Gazeta Wyborcza refused to even mention my existence no matter what I was engaged in, versus the tabloids where because they were looking to sell papers, I mean, Pudelik does great traffic, and I just want to say I'm very proud. I was in Pudelik for the first time today, so it's kind of a watershed moment for me. Now I can focus on CNN. The tabloids are looking to have things that shock, that interest, that intrigue, and as a result, they are open. They are not ideologically narrow-minded. They will accept anything, and I am pretty much living proof of that. I love you. I do also want to make a distinction. When I'm talking about the tabloids and this mainstream press, I'm mostly speaking about the dailies. In Poland and also in the US, the weeklies, the news weeklies, have a little bit of a different position, and a great example of that is Wprost and Do Rzeczy. It's a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more analytical. The work they do is a little deeper. To give you an example, I think that the paragon of what media should be in this country is best represented by Vprost and Afera Tashmova being a watershed moment. And I don't know if people realize it, but you are all in the presence of media royalty right now because Michał Lisiecki, who I consider a hero for what he did last year at great personal risk, and we saw what happened. They tried to put him out of business. He knew what was right, and what was right was to expose the frauds and corruptions and the level of institutional corruption that the last government was engaged in, and he printed the transcripts. And it shows you that there is certain pockets of media, of a media that takes its role as truth to power and overseer for the public good seriously. And, I encourage all, especially where Vprost has gone. Vprost is, to me, a great example of media doing what it should do. And I don't think it's coincidental that this is Stefan Kisielewski's paper. And even though it lost its way for a few years, it's good to see that it's doing what it should be doing.
Don't you think that the price is too high sometimes?
No, I think they should raise the price, but I'm biased.
Matthew, repeatedly you issued the fact that the average Pole is no way protected by his challenging in public. For example, a corrupt politician, he may sue him for a libel and a process. The cost of the time do not provide equal opportunities for the accused and accusee. And you did throw the challenge yourself for the Radosław Sikorski and calling him a financial cheater. For which behalf of the foreign minister Roman Giertych wanted to sue you, and you repeatedly wanted him to sue you because you would like to show him that you can defend from a politician even if you are accusing him of being a fraud. And how Polish person, the regular citizen can fight against corrupt politicians? How do you see this? Because you experience this in your own history, your own life.
In any country of 40 million people, there's going to be some bad people. Roman Giertych is the worst person in Poland.
I nawet nie trzeba było tłumaczyć, jak widzę.
I haven't found many people who can disagree with that statement. Here's a guy, former education minister, who has actively fought free speech. He's actively fought the ability of a free people to express themselves. He uses predominantly the civil justice system to weigh people down in lawsuits and threaten them, like he did with me, defamation suits, for criticizing those who are elected or appointed to public office. Those are the people who have a public trust. Those are the people who, especially in Poland in the last 25 years, have continually violated the public trust. To not be able to call them out will only, and it has, embolden and entrench institutional corruption. And Giertych has been a lever, a mechanism for them to deeper entrench corruption without fear of getting called out by pissed off people. What he has done, I find to be absolutely abhorrent. There's no room for this in a free society. So when he threatened me with a defamation suit a year ago for referring to Sikorski paying his friend a very, very inflated no-bid contract for proofreading speeches when Sikorski speaks English, when he had Maya, everyone's favorite Rostovska Maya, also proofreading his speeches, for him to call my reference of this to be an act of fraud, financial fraud, he said this was hate speech. And I don't disagree with him. It is hate speech. I hate corruption. I hate non-competitively bid contracts. I hate looting. I hate when they take taxpayer money, the hard-earned capital and work of a free people, and use it to pay their friends. I absolutely hate that.
And you're calling it the hate speech is a great speech?
I always say hate speech is great speech, and that not only references contract procurement, but it also references the free market of ideas, and that if you want to ban a concept, all you're going to do is create a black market for that concept, that idea, like what Germany does with Holocaust denial. I'm a Jew. I think that if anybody wants to go around spouting Nazi nonsense, they should have the right to do so. If anybody wants to deny the Holocaust, they should have a right to do so, because who is going to determine when the line is crossed? Roman Gertic thinks he should be the one to determine that. And as a result, the determination is criticism of those who are looting the country, his friends. So he has been this absolutely unacceptable in a democracy mechanism for stifling those who would criticize naturally. And it is the job of an engaged citizenry to criticize politicians, to hold them accountable. It's also the job of the media. But as we see in Poland, the media has been bought and paid for by the treasury to run interference, to protect the corruption. So between Gertic and the media trying to stifle the truth, trying to threaten the critics, that's why corruption has persisted to this degree in Poland, and that's why I view what Wprost did with Afera Taśmowa as the inflection point. That's when it was so brazen, so over the top, so disgusting, reprehensible, and obvious. People like Belka, who were willing to steal from 40 million Poles and every investor around the world who invested in Poland so that they could depreciate the currency and buy the election, why this needs to be called out, why someone like Gertic should be absolutely ostracized for his actions, and why Poland and any free society needs unfettered free speech. It needs a First Amendment like in the US, and the Polish Constitution was written by commies for post-commies, so it's lacking a lot of protection of freedom. And Gertic is an enabler of that and a continuer of that. And I find that unacceptable. I've been trying to get sued by him, but he's a little bit scared now that there's somebody who will actually face him in court. I'm willing to face him, and whatever the court rules, we'll let the court of public opinion really decide what they think about this process of civil defamation suits stifling criticism. I think it's unacceptable, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. And I have a big mouth.
Matthew, in what way Poland can defend itself from unfavorable narrative flowing from the foreign media? Can and should Poland fight, argue, respond for that?
Poles are the most educated people in Europe. This is the highest level of literacy, the highest level of college education in Europe. What we need is engagement. There's a dearth, a shortage of voices in the West willing to defend Poland because most of the media is controlled by the GW crowd. But there's a lot of high-quality voices that need to get out there in English on the right and refute some of these lies. Blogging, social media, I'm doing it. I'm starting to see more and more people do it. We are up against a very poisoned, coercive, rotten structure, and that is a desperate left, a left that has been rejected, rebuked philosophically, personally, and now we're going to be screwing with their money. They've been stealing, and we're going to be putting a halt to that. That reform is moving very, very quickly thanks to the unilateral mandate that this government has received. So they are under assault in their existential way. But they have this last bastion, and that's the media, and they are not going down without a fight. I mean, a lot of these people, hopefully, we'll see how aggressive Ziobro is this time around, a lot of these people could go to jail. I mean, they looted the country. Everybody in this room knows that. Most people on the street know that. There's a reason why this mandate was so strong. Afera Taśmowa proved it for those who might have doubted it. The only people who won't admit that are what the Polish right call the lemmings. And they are plenty in number, but not high in intellect. So they are beatable. But they have a jump on the media, but we have the silent majority. We have the numbers and we have truth. Our values, this is something Reagan used to say, this is something Ted Cruz running for president now in America says, our values, our ideas are right. They're better. They will win in a meritocratic dynamic, a meritocratic format. But the left has the powers of coercion. They've owned the culture, they've owned the media, and they are using it. But they're getting hurt. I mean, everywhere around Europe, you see the rejection. Poland is about to take a place at a very, very high esteem globally because it is leading the charge of rejecting the uber left. And so in the US, I know that I'm really working hard to spread this. And I know in the American right, they didn't know it until I went to DC and started discussing some of these false narratives. But now they know it, and they're embracing it, and they're even using it as a model. And this is happening all over Europe. So I actually think we're in a good position, but what we need in the short term is engagement. People here obviously came to talk about ideas. And so we need your help. We need you out there writing on social media, writing letters, Niezależna did this letter that I helped write with the Niezależna and Gazeta Polska. This sort of open letter that could be thrown on websites and like the New York Times comment section. And so just engaging, they will see that we have a majority, and they will try and ignore us, but we have a groundswell. The forces of our scale is really, really strong, and we need to utilize that.
So you think that Poland is leading the charge with the reborn, right-wing media?
Absolutely. In Poland, the sixth biggest country and economy in Europe, it's a definitive move to the right. The top 5 countries, none of them have done it. The UK is trying, and the UK is looking here and seeing how effective it is. I'm writing for Breitbart London now. It's a major Western platform, and I'm writing for their UK segment, their UK vertical. And it is... It's absolutely resonating in the UK, and I think Poland will be a model for them as the Brexit vote, the referendum, comes closer, because they see that European referendums have been ignored again and again. Those of democratic values, as long as you agree with them, they're democratic values. Otherwise, they're totalitarians. The Brexit is coming, and I actually think that it's above a 50% chance that Britain votes out.
Matthew, as we are well aware, and you just did everything that we will be aware of, that you were in this bal dziennikarzy,
bal socialista.
Bal socjalistów, jak go as you call it, and you just yourself throw into this society and troll them, making a picture with Olejnik, with all of these people that you particularly don't like. And do you think this is a good, guerrilla tactic, attacking them from the inside? Is it something that should be, done by other people, or maybe it was only just your performance? How do you see yourself, in the Polish mainstream media, as an opposition, as a hard opposition? Make me believe that what you did there was something reasonable and helpful.
These are Poland's worst people. These are the people who have been, obviously Gertik being there was the creme de la creme, the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. So you had all of Poland's, or a lot of Poland, Tomasz Lisz wasn't there, but you had a lot, or Adam Michnik was not there, but you had a lot of Poland's worst people, and then you had Poland's worst person, Roman Gertik. And these are people who are so used to being the elite and never being questioned and being treated like deities. They're so not used to having it flipped on them. These are the people who, for months and months and months leading into the presidentials and the regional elections, went as far as they could to undermine the right side and work for the left side, even going as far as going after President Andrzej Duda's daughter. These people, the ends justify the means for them. They believe that they are the progenitors of enlightened values, and they are intolerant to any other viewpoint. So by definition, my view is they're not enlightened, that they're would-be totalitarians and tyrants and heathen. For me, it was a joy going there and just lampooning them. These are people that lampoon every one of their critics. They lampoon everyone that disagrees with them, and they get away with it because they've had control, because they've had the taxpayer funding mechanism, the treasury taking care of them. So there's been no accountability. When you have Tomasz Lisz going and protesting in an agitprop movement to destabilize the government funded by Soros, and then claiming to be a journalist, something doesn't add up. When you have politicians, some of the worst politicians, Gertik, I don't even know if he's a politician, but Hania Gronkiewicz-Waltz, as I not so affectionately refer to, Bufetowa, Grzegorz Schetina, Michał Szczerba, some of the most apparatchik of the PO apparatchiks, mixing with the journalists who cover them, you see that they're not taking their jobs very seriously of working for the taxpayer or reporting truth for the citizen. They're in a crony cabal looking to protect their own power entrenchment and their own interests. The worst part is they are taking their bread, their sustenance from our mouths, from our pockets, and then claiming they're helping us, claiming they're doing us a favor. Well, thank you, no. So somebody, and a lot of people are scared of being on the wrong side of them because of the platforms they have, because they have Gertik. I'm certainly not. As my father used to say, I don't care what they say about me as long as they spell my name right. And so far, they've spelled my name right. I'm getting a lot of hate. Doesn't bother me. If I need more friends, I'll get a puppy. I have enough friends. So I'd like to see, hopefully I can inspire people to not just troll on social media. There's a lot of keyboard warriors around here, but actually put themselves at a little bit of risk, because only when you do so, when you face someone like Gertik, who's a bully, can you really knock them off their pedestal. And I think that I, to some small degree, smacked them a little this weekend. I mean, it's got covered very, very widely. They did not look good. Maybe they think I didn't look good, but I know from the response popularly that most people agreed with me. And the mandate that this government got to reform everything from the media to the judiciary proves most people agree with me. They're sick of, there's an old American expression, having someone piss on your head and telling you it's raining. That's what this media's been doing. They're pissing on our heads and they tell us it's raining. And then they want to sell us an umbrella at a non-competitively bid rate.
And you tell them that they are pissing actually, not raining, and that may be what hurts them.
Well, it's just exposing them for the frauds they are. And they are moral frauds, intellectual frauds. I mean, these are the most intellectually lazy people ever. They live in an echo chamber. They quote each other. They agree with each other. And they will not debate, outside viewpoints. Anne Applebaum blocks everybody. Now that she doesn't only block people who want to debate her, she blocks people who mention me. So last week she was speaking in London, and somebody said, "Oh, Matthew Tyrmand's in London. He's going to drop by." Everybody who did that, I think I wasn't even aware of it until after. Everyone who did that, she blocked every single person who mentioned me. So these people are scared of debate. They know they will get the crap beat out of them in an open debate. So they try and stifle debate. But we can debate them.
Serdecznie dziękujemy. I bardzo dziękuję tłumacz Marysi Kądzielskiej, bo taką rakietę jak Matthew przetłumaczyć to nie zazdroszczę.
She had the hard job. Well done. Where were you people on Saturday night when I needed you? I needed you people at Bal Socialista. I had one woman come up to me, one of the organizers, and she started yelling at me, "How dare you put these pictures online and offend these good people?" And she said, "I'm a countess. You have no respect for the aristocracy because you don't understand." And I said, "Thank you for proving my point exactly." And her name is Maria Beninska. So go find her on social media and attack the hell out of her.